Good evening and welcome to webinar number 22 by the Foreign Correspondents Club of South Asia, FCC South Asia from New Delhi. My name is Munish Gupta. I am the Secretary of FCC South Asia and also the founder and managing editor of People of Indian Origin Television, PIOTV. And for those who may not know, I am a part of the Indian diaspora myself, being an Indian American and an OCI card holder. So this is of special interest to me, our webinar today. I will request our president to introduce the subject of American elections and the Indian American diaspora a little bit later with our three special guest speakers from the US. But let me, in the meantime, introduce my panelists who are going to be with us and interacting with our guest speakers. First one, Mayank Chaya, head of Bharat FM Radio from Chicago. There we go, Mayank. And Manish Chand, editor-in-chief of India Rights Network, right here from New Delhi, and quite a traveler. Ms. Purnima Sharma, editorial director of S-Cube, also from New Delhi. Welcome, Purnima. And Surya Jadigunta, CEO of P3 Foundation for Smart Cities from Hyderabad and in India. So we have quite a global audience. Quite a global panel here, and I'm sure a global audience also. So before I bring it over to Venkat, I just want to let everybody know that we are live as of now on multiple social media and media platforms, among them FCC South Asia Zone Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, FCCSouthAsia.com website, also on Bharat FM Radio, on PIOTV Facebook page, and United News of India, UNI, which is one of the major wire services out of India, their Facebook page also. So welcome again, and Venkat, please introduce our special guests.
Good evening in India and good morning in America and the rest of the world. I don't know, whatever it is. A good day to all of you, gentlemen and ladies. We are delighted to host this very important webinar, because for the first time in the 232-year history of American presidential elections, Indians are being talked about more than any time in the past. There are 4 million Indian Americans right now in America, and there are 500,000 people whose status is not legal yet, and only 1.8 million Indian American voters. But the Republicans and the Democrats have been wooing them like nobody's business. They're hosting special events and they're talking to the Sikhs and other communities. And so we thought that this is very interesting. Maybe the Indian community in America today has come of age, so we decided to host this very important webinar. We have with us, Ramesh Kapur joining us from Boston. Ramesh, is the president of US-India Security Council. He's also the president of the Medical Technical Gases Limited. He has been active in the an Indian American Forum for Political Education, and founder and charter member of the Indus Entrepreneurs Boston. And he met all the Indian prime ministers from Rajiv Gandhi onwards. He was the key person to convince 86% of the Democratic Party members to vote for the historic Indo-US Civil Nuclear Cooperation Agreement, which has really changed the relationship between India and the United States. And he became a naturalized citizen of the US in 1978. He and his wife, Susan, have been married since 1973. A warm welcome to you, Ramesh. I now introduce Dr. Mukesh Aghi. He is the president and CEO of the US-India Strategic Partnership Forum. And he served as CEO of the board of L&T Infotech, was founding CEO of the Universitas 21 Global, the world's largest consortium of research-led universities. He was president of the IBM India for IBM Corporation. He has several degrees from different universities, including one from Harvard University. And he has also received many awards, including the J.R.D. Tata Leadership Award. He loves mountaineering and has climbed some of the highest peaks in North America and Europe. You must come to climb the mountains in the Himalayas next, Mukesh. And he is a major marathon enthusiast and has competed in 27 international marathons so far. He is joining us from Washington, D.C. We have Priya Samant. She likes to describe herself as an impact advisor and technology executive, a change maker, worked on several US presidential campaigns. She is active in many social cause groups, has experience in the areas of technology, innovation, social entrepreneurship, emerging markets, etc. And her third documentary, My House India, was listed and reviewed for the Oscars this year. She has moderated panels at the World Economic Forum, chaired panels at 2020 Horaris India and extraordinary meetings. Early this week, actually on the 1st of October, she hosted a very interesting webinar with A.R. Rahman and Ashutosh Gowarikar from Bollywood and Majid Majidi of Iran fame on fostering purpose through movies. Since Priya knows Ramesh and Mukesh very well, I would like to invite her first to set the stage by, telling us something about, what's going on right now. The election is barely exactly 1 month away, and Mr. Trump has been hospitalized with COVID positive. So tell us all about it, Priya.
Sure. Thank you so much, Venkat Narayan sir. It's an honor to be with the esteemed panel members here. So my name is Priya Samant and I'm based out of Boston, but my roots are from Mumbai, India. So immigrants from India first arrived in the United States in a very small numbers during the early 1900s, primarily as low-skilled farm laborers. In 1960, just 12,000 Indian immigrants lived in the United States, representing around less than 0.5% of the 9.7 million overall immigrant population. Migration from India actually swelled between the 1965 and 1990 as the series of the legislative changes, that happened and removed the national origin status. Again, there was a huge spike in the era of 1990s because of the visas and the temporary skilled laborers that were allowed to come to the United States. So now in 2020, the population is projected to be around 4 million. The Indian diaspora is one of the fastest growing immigrants group and the second largest after the Mexicans. Indian Americans are also highly educated and one of the most wealthiest groups in the US. So Democrats as well as the Republicans' US presidential campaigns have expanded their digital and social media advertisements, have created, regional slogans and held virtual events during this COVID pandemic to reach out to the Indian American voters. And they continue to do so as we are now getting closer to the election date. Senator Kamala Harris's historic nomination as the Democratic vice presidential, candidate has definitely generated a lot of enthusiasm within the diaspora and especially within the second generation Indian American population. Now that President Donald Trump has tested COVID positive and the election is only 31 days, away, it's very, very, very important for us to pay close attention to this race. Many may dislike or disagree, including myself, with President Trump's some of the policies and politics. But as a fellow human being, we must wish him and the First Lady a very safe recovery. And with that, what I want to emphasize is that many Indian American are getting civically engaged and involved and are running for the office in this country because we want to contribute in a meaningful way and give back to our communities. So in opening this discussion today, we have two really esteemed guests as the president of FCC, as Venkat Narayan mentioned, Mr. Mukesh Aghi, who is the CEO and chairman of the US-India Strategic Partnership Forum, and Mr. Ramesh Kapur, who is the president of US-India Security Council, here with us to discuss in depth. So now I would like to invite Mr. Munish Gupta, who is the secretary of FCC, to open this event's conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Priya. Thank you. That was lovely setting the stone. Let me start with Mr. Ramesh Kapur, who's the president of the US-India Security Council, and ask him, where do we stand 1 month away from the US elections? Where do we exactly stand vis-a-vis the Indian-American community? Over to you, Ramesh. Can you unmute yourself?
How about now? Am I unmuted?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
all right.
Please go ahead.
Going back, in terms of the elections, where it is, my prediction is Vice President Biden and Kamala Harris are going to be the next president and vice president. All right. And after this COVID-19, it seals the scene. And I've been raising money. I mean, I've been doing presidential elections since 1986. Okay, every Democratic presidential election, I've been active in and making some recommendations to the candidates. Some candidates have listened, others have not listened. So I understand American politics. Okay, this is my passion. I spend maybe about 60 to 70% of my time in this area, and only 30% in my business. All right, my wife always complains that you spend more time in politics. So it's coming from experience. It's not that I read somewhere or whatever it is. I'll give you an example. In 2016, in January of 2016, I did a fundraiser for Kamala Harris in my home. She was running for the Senate. All right. And at that time, I said that Trump is going to be the next president, and people will get so disgusted with him, and I said, you will be the future president, which is what I could see the ingredients on her, so that's what my prediction is, and I think what will happen is that it will be announced very early. The way things are going, I think we will also take Ohio also. So if anybody takes these two states, okay, Florida and Ohio, the game is over. And they're the states that all the votes will be counted on the day of the election. All right. So there's a lot of talk about this pundits who keep saying, well, Trump won't concede, and there's a problem, this, that. It's just for noise. It's just basic noise. They do not understand American politics. They do not understand any areas, about how American politics is done. So my sense is it's going to be tsunami at the present time after COVID-19. It's going to be close. And those elections was decided in 2016 elections when Democrats took the House, and now it's so in terms of the Indian American community. But the U.S.-India relationship will be strong, okay, with Biden, all right. And a lot of people do not. There are a few chatter in the. We get so in minute things. Oh, CAA, and most of the people don't know what CAA even stands for. But at the end of the day, you have to look at the bigger pictures, okay? The civil nuclear deal. Biden was the instrument person who passed the civil nuclear deal amongst Democrats. If Democrats were not on board, we would have never passed the civil nuclear deal. All right. And not only that, people do not know the history. Biden in 1975, when India exploded the Pokhran 1, Biden was on the Foreign Relations Committee. He voted against sanctions for India because there were going to be sanctions to India. And Jimmy Carter was the president at that time. And Jimmy Carter won by just one vote in the Senate. If at that time there would be sanctions to India, it would be devastating to India because the Indian diaspora wasn't strong enough, which was easier during the Pokhran 2. We were able to take all the sanctions out. And it was Biden's vote that made the difference. So a lot of people, are saying that, oh, he's not for CAA. So we have to look at my philosophy is you do the right thing at the right time, all right, and other things don't matter, okay. So that's where we are going to see a much deeper relationship, a more depth relationship with India than this photo ops that we have, and there's huge crowds that are there. But with Biden, there is going to be much more closer relation, and he has openly said that India is critical to United States national security. All right, so that's where I see U.S.-India relationship, and also the Indian American community. You have to realize that at the end of the day, our kids and our grandkids have been, made fun of in schools with their accent, their food that they bring, and everything, and Trump has put the gasoline in that fire. All right, so it's also better for our next generation that this is important, and Vice President helped me in the Export Control Act. So what we're trying to do is India to be also NATO +6. Now we have Japan, South Korea, Australia, New Zealand, Israel. So we're trying to get India to be the 6th. Now they are major defense partner. We are moving to make it permanent. Once that law is made permanent, which Vice President helped me when he was a Vice President, Obama was a little cautious, but he helped me at that time, moving the law. If that law is passed, I think India will be safer. 350 million Americans will be safe. 1.3 billion Indians will be safe because China will be more careful. Now it's not just words. The law is there, and they will realize that America will have India's back. So those are the bigger issues that we are talking about instead of a CAA. I mean, people talk about CAA. I tell them, what is it, like attack on Bhagavad Gita? What do you mean CAA? It's controversial in India. Okay, so human rights, civil rights is important to the Democratic Party, and friends can disagree, and that's what but the depth will be much more. And Kashmir 370 is over. Okay, after the Supreme Court said that internet was free speech, that came in, that calmed the Democratic Party, I usually say there are difference between Democrats and Republicans is one word. If you use it, Democrats, it's compassion. All right. If one line you have to use with Republicans and Democrats is that to the Republicans, the end justifies the means. To the Democrat, the end does not justify the means, just like Gandhi and Bhagavad Gita says. And that's the difference, basically. Everything else is this is on the bigger scale that you look at it. And they cannot ignore India. India is as I said, both sides have realized that it's important. But I have always got more substance out of the Democratic Party in terms of US-India relationship than the Republican Party since 1986, since Rajiv Gandhi's time. I guess Punjabis have have to speak long, long-winded speeches. Okay.
Okay. In the interest of time, I'm going to invite, because we'll continue the interaction, but I'm going to invite Dr. Mukesh Agi. He's the president and CEO of the US-India Strategic Partnership Forum. So we've heard from a Democrat. I could sense, I could tell, and you were an outpouring of democratic voice, Ramesh. Let's hear from a bipartisan voice in DC. Mukesh, give us your view on one, where the elections stand today, and particularly after President Trump, as Priya rightly said, President Trump and his wife Melania are now down with COVID. Does that change anything? And where do you see the trends going as far as the Indian Americans are concerned? Please.
Good morning, Manish. Thank you very much for inviting me. And we represent a bipartisan approach to U.S.-India relationship. Either be Democrat or Republican, we tend to work with both sides. But let me just first give you a scenario of the U.S. voters, and then I'll come to the Indian American and where we see the whole election going into. You have roughly around 240 million eligible U.S. voters. And if you look at the breakdown, the trend since 2000 to 2018 has been that almost 76% of these voters are white in year 2000, and Hispanics were almost 7%, blacks were 12%, and Asian, where the Indians come in, as categorized 2%. And when you move down to 2018 election, the white vote came down to 67% from 76%, and Hispanic grew from 7% to 13%. And the African American vote moved from 12% to 13%, and then the Asian moved from 2 to 4%. What's interesting is that almost, I would say, 13% of the African American voters are ineligible because they felony convictions. So that number keeps on dropping as time goes by. But what's also interesting is when you look at the Indian vote, or Indian vote has gone up from almost, has grown from year 2000 to 2018 by 147%, because as more and more Indian immigrants come in, the small base has gone up. But what's fascinating is when you look at the US trend in voting, is that on the average in the last election, we had only 55.5% of the eligible voters who came in and voted. And when you break that down, you look at by income also and by gender also, only 41% of the population voted if your income is less than $10,000 per year. And if your income is over $150,000, then almost 78% voted. So what we are seeing is a trend is higher the income, the higher the education, higher the participation in voting process. And that's where the Indian American community come in, because while their base may be small, they tend to participate a lot in exercising the franchise when the US election comes in. Now, when you look at, as mentioned earlier, roughly 4.5 million Indian Americans and 1 point eligible voters. And in the last election, we had around 48%, which were registered Democrats, and 22% were Republicans, and 30% were independent. That's the breakdown of the Indian American voters itself. And in the last election, 85% voted for Hillary Clinton and 15% voted for Trump. And the latest survey which we have seen, the trend is that almost 66% of Indian American are going to vote Democrat, and almost 28% are going to vote for a Republican itself. Now, the real crux of the matter comes in is on the election day, who turns up and votes itself. The other factor which is very important to understand is there's a generation gap also coming in. You have first generation Indian Americans who seem to work on the cause of US-India relationship with much more passion. Whereas the second generation Indian American who were born in the United States, their connect with India is not as passionate as the first generation. And so their issues on voting pattern shifts. While and if you break it down, the first generation Indian American tend to focus a lot on US-India relationship, be it security, be it immigration, be it healthcare, or be it investment. Whereas on the second generation, what we are seeing is that they tend to focus more on domestic issues itself. And so that trend seems to continue as that generation picks up. I would say the other factor which is important to understand is that the Indian Americans are the largest contributor on a per capita basis on election funding. In the last election, 2016, we did an analysis. Almost top 300 Indian American contributed over $35 million in political campaigns. And that number seems to go up and up and up. Now, where do we see the election coming, the results coming in? I think the health crisis which the president has gone through, and I would say Republican Party is going through, is definitely going to have an impact on the election results itself. And I would say I would lean towards Ramesh Kapur's analysis that at the moment the trend is that Biden team will win. The question really becomes is what's the percentage of point they'll win. But as I said, the 30 days, there could be more surprise itself. But as of today, I would say it's the Democrat who can will be the winner itself. And again, as time goes by, the next 30 days, a lot can change. So that's where our analysis, and glad to take any questions as we get into the next point of our panel discussion. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mukesh. A very sort of 360-degree picture. Before I move on to my friend Mayank Chaya, who's joining us from the US, and I'm sure he's heavily involved. I am not so heavily involved, but I'm sort of sitting on the fence, looking at where things are going, even from a media perspective. But you see, the notion here in India is that from the utterances that we have seen, the public utterances, that the Biden-Harris team is not so warm towards India, and Modi, being a conservative prime minister in India, does get along with a conservative Trump. And they've shown that. They've demonstrated that in the last 4 years, how they stand together, and more particularly so now with the standoff in China, with China in Ladakh, that the Trump government has really come out strongly in support of India. So first generation matters, I agree with you. But let me first ask Mayank. Mayank, what is your view on what's going on with the Indian Americans and the US, and of course the US election outcome, since we are only 30 days away?
First of all, thank you very much for allowing me to be here. I'm an outsider journalist. I observe things, don't express too much opinion on these things other than when I write my edits or columns. But I'm struck by it's nothing to do with what we are discussing right now, but I'm struck by the irony that as a world, we have been laid low by a real life virus and forced into a virtual reality that we are all in now. So we have to recognize that. And I think we are perhaps in the midst of a completely new world caused by a real life virus. I wanted to put it out there. In terms of the way Indian Americans are approaching this election, the first thing that struck me is it is particularly polarized this time. Although the breakup, as Dr. Aghi pointed out, is about 66% on the Democratic side and 28 or so towards the Republican side. But if you look at the social media interactions, be it on Facebook or Twitter, you find that the disagreements within the community are pretty intense. I'm somewhat troubled by the fact that Mr. Trump enjoys a near cult-like status within the segment of Indian Americans that support him. And you could easily change the language between Mr. Trump and Mr. Modi without noticing the difference. There is a bhakti moment on for Mr. Trump, and I personally find it rather unsettling, but that's the way it is. I'm always skeptical about whether Indian Americans have the means to significantly sway the election unless the race is very close. And as both Mr. Kapur and Dr. Aghi seem to describe, if it's going to break on the Biden side and it's not going to be that close, then I'm not too sure if Indian Americans would really make a material difference to where it might end up. That's my broad take on the issue.
Great, wonderful. That's a ringside view. Amazing. Let me come to Purnima. Purnima Sharma is joining us from Delhi, editorial director, S-Cube. Purnima, what is your view on how you are looking at the U.S. election one, and what do you hear the murmurs in India about the Indo-U.S. relations, which way the Indian American community is thinking of the elections, sitting far away, but give us your view. Can you unmute yourself? Unmute yourself, please.
Well, I would like to ask a question first to the person who just spoke before me. I also have many questions because Indian diaspora is what they are thinking, what is their voting behavior, and what are their preferences. I mean, is it that what I have question is that is it very divided this time, or there's a sharp division, or because of Kamala Harris for vice president post her nomination? I mean, has that heavily tilted the voting behavior of Indian diaspora?
Who's going to take that question? Do you want to, Ramesh?
I want to ask the question to the person who just spoke before me. I'm sorry, I could. Mayank, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm rather flattered and surprised that in the midst of two heavy hitters, I'm asked that question, but I'll attempt to answer it nevertheless. I don't think it's, as we pointed out, the breakdown is still 66% on the Democratic side and about 28% on the Republican side, which pretty much tracks the way Indian Americans have voted in the past 3 or 4 elections. That's my take. I think the divisions are pretty clear because of the presence of Kamala Harris, who was first seen as an exciting figure when she was announced. But I think people began to discover, at least on the right ideological side, that she may not be as warm towards India as they might have suspected. But these are all the knee-jerk assessments by the community, which is not, I don't think, is as plugged in as the two gentlemen here who have spent their lifetime looking at American politics. So at the ordinary average Indian American level, which I often interact with as part of my job, I think they just go purely by what their gut feel is, and they are these days quite swayed by WhatsApp and Facebook postings, particularly from one ideology.
Thank you.
I would like to ask Dr. Mukesh Aghi also that, I mean, do you agree with this, the fact that this time Indian Americans are not going to be the trump card for the incumbent President Trump?
Well, I think when you look at the Indian American votes, which is 1.8 million, it is very dissipated. It's not concentrated. Okay. And what really happens is when you look at that 1.8 million eligible voters, among the 240 million voters, the impact is very, very minimal. But I think the impact where it is much more solid is because they engage a lot into political campaign. They are engaged a lot in political fundraising. They are engaged a lot in political fund contribution itself. And if you look at today, the Biden transition team is full of Indian Americans itself. So they are having an impact, not just, I would say the impact is not on a vote basis. The impact is more on the influence basis as they try to steer both parties to win in the next election.
Let me, thank you, Mukesh. Before I ask Manish to ask his next question, I'm reminded of my time when I first landed in America in '87 and making the rounds of US Capitol. Nobody thought anything of India. We were fraught with the Kashmir and then Khalistan and all kinds of issues. See, today Indian Americans make a very big difference, but it's primarily not so much the vote difference, but the note difference. The capital contributions that we are making, or political contributions that we are making. And certainly in that direction, we have a great influence on both the Democrats and the Republicans, and it's now become very, very evident, particularly in President Trump's era. And later down, one of you can comment on that. But let me come to Manish. Manish, your comment and questions.
Passionately tracking American politics, and I speak now from the foreign policy perspective. You see, when Trump came to power in a surprise win in 2016, we at our India and the World magazine did a cover story on the Trump anxiety. Because Trump was an unknown quantity to a lot of us, and he was seen as a maverick, and there were all kinds of stories and legend and myths about him. We in India know Biden probably better. He's been vice president and all, but I feel there is also the Biden anxiety. Why I say this is because, those of us who saw those, got used to this Modi and Trump bonhomie, hug fest and all that. In terms of personality, my worry is it may be because, it's nowadays foreign policy and politics, interstate relations also sometimes depend a great deal on personality. So the point is this, that when we talk of Biden anxiety, and given the record of, human rights activism and all that, in what way, this is a question and also a kind of an inquiry that in what tangible ways Biden presidency will affect the stature of India in the foreign policy calculus of the democratic dispensation. And the second point is, the Republicans, the commitment to India and the nuclear deal. Of course, Biden played a role. It started with the Republican administration. For the second presidency of George Bush, we saw that revolutionary transformation of India's state relations. I would like to ask, maybe Dr. Aghi and Ramesh Kapur and whoever else want to answer. Do you think Biden will be that committed to the rise of India, as at least in public statements the Republican presidents have been in recent past? Thank you.
Great questions, Manish. Can you come first, Mukesh, and then Ramesh?
Sure, Manish. I think the Biden presidency approach will be more multilateral towards India rather than transactional. But that's important to understand because so far under President Trump, the approach has been very transactional, trade deal, no trade deal, whereas I see under Biden it'll be multilateral. And that is going to define the relationship between the two countries. And be it on the issue of defense, be it on the issue of trade, immigration, all these issues will benefit India itself. But more important, you have to understand, US foreign policy towards India is defined by its relationship with China. And we see US-China relationship getting much, much more wider from the perspective of there'll be much more tension, which will grow in. And India plays a very pivotal role between that relationship. And so the concept of Quad, the Indo-Pacific region, will become important. The strategic partnership from a defense perspective will grow very, very strong. It is already growing under Trump administration, but it will continue to grow under Biden. But I think the big difference I see it is that India, US will cooperate much more on clean energy. They're going to cooperate much on health issue. They're going to cooperate much more on immigration issue. And Biden has made a statement already that India is an important partner and it will give India a trade deal rather than withdrawing the GSP, which impacted small exporters from India into the US. So I strongly feel the approach will be multilateral under Biden rather than transactional.
Ramesh, continuing on Manish's question, Does it really matter today? You have to unmute yourself, Ramesh. Unmute yourself, please.
All right. Let's see.
Yeah, but I just want to add to what
Am I
Manish
unmuted?
said. Does it really matter today who becomes the president? Because India remains very important and, as Mukesh said, pivotal to US, particularly in the Indo-Pacific.
Yeah, I agree. As I said, India is important, and that's one of the reasons where the Indian community also become important. But let me just go back to other than just the numbers that Mukesh was talking about. What people don't realize the trickle-down effect that the Indian community have. You know, we are doctors, we are entrepreneurs, we are deans of universities, researchers. So there's a lot of trickle-down effect on that Indian community generate, other than just money, other than just the participation. So that is a very important part that helps. Most people really doesn't make any difference, and if they see the doctor, pro Democrats, they will go for that. And now that also what happens is that now that Kamala Harris is on the ticket, all right. People look at everybody. It's like Bobby Jindal when he was the governor. I remember all my friends saying, "Oh, Bobby Jindal, he's a governor." So that type of relationship will always be there. For example, let's give an example for Obama. On all purposes, Obama was white. Okay, he was raised by a white mother. He was raised by a white grandfather. All right. But what happened is that what happened is that the blacks 95% embraced him as one of their own. The whites did not embrace him in that ratio. All right. So the same thing is what I told people talk about just little things about are they CAA or other things are there. But you have to look at the bigger picture. When I did the fundraiser for Kamala Harris, and I said, and I told the story about Obama, how the whites never really embraced him, and I said, I want you to know that 4 million Indian Americans embrace you as one of our own, and 1.3 billion Indians and Mother India embraces you, her as one of her own. And she put her hands up and she jumped up. She says, yes. She said, you have to remember that all her early days, okay, and being raised by Gopalan, her Shamala Gopalan, her mother. Those are transformational. These are early years that you cannot change. So my question to the folks in the Indian community is, and these are temporary, it's all emotional issues. I remember when and Agi was at the US India Business Council when Sanna was the ambassador, and they said, somebody said that there were 3 hugs with Modi and Obama, and Sanna says, no, there were 4 hugs in there. They were competing with hugs over there. So, these are temporary things that, as Agi said, the depth will be much more. And, the relationship, and I'll give you an example. When the president was, and this reflects, all the little things are there that reflects of how the people think. When the vice president went to India, when Modi was a prime minister, before he went, I had met him. And we talked. We said, I said, how about defense treaty with India? And Biden looks at me and he says, "You think they'll go along with it?" And I said, "We'll sell it to them." So his ideas are on a different scale than photo ops or huge numbers part of it. And this will be also a wake-up call for Modi, administration not to put all their eggs in one basket. They did that with Hillary Clinton. and then they had to catch up with Trump. They're doing the same thing with Biden, all right? And after Howdy Modi, I was pushing a meeting with Biden in New York. Okay, I could arrange it, and but the couldn't sell it to the ambassador. The ambassador Shringla was excited about it. He thought it was a great idea, but he couldn't sell it to Jaishankar over there. So these are the views that are there, that they have to start being more understanding American politics. And unfortunately, the external affairs over here in the Indian side does not understand the American politics at all. We had the situation with Jaipal, okay, where meeting was canceled. You know, the meetings have to be, you do not cancel a meeting because the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, all right, Engel was there. You do not cancel. It was Jaipal was there. She was a little emotional about Kashmir and human rights. She probably felt, being Indian American, how can India do that? She had not well read about Kashmir and the story about Kashmir for 30 years of terrorism. So, you know, and then all of a sudden you cancel the whole meeting. All right, you do not cancel. This is what they have to understand. Okay, but I guess Agi is more knowledgeable with his doctorate next to him. But honestly, people with doctorates don't make new good politicians. Okay, there's a lot of a lot of preaching, a lot of talk and everything, and so if you want to get things done, you see, I always say, perfection is the enemy of good in a democracy. Right? Yeah. You cannot have. You have to look at the bigger picture. So that's what I think. I think what that needs is that the Indian external affairs, now they're in a tough spot. All right, they've got to start listening to Agi, listening to me, listen to our folks that are over here, Indian American community, that we understand each, instead of preaching and giving speeches. That doesn't get things done. Americans are very practical people. Okay.
Thank you for the answer. But I want to remind you, Ramesh, I was there during that wonderful time, that era of 1987 to 91, 92 in DC. And I know Jaishankar intimately because he was counselor political at that time, and a lot of Indian people, ambassadors and others who went by. I wouldn't say that Jaishankar, particularly since you named him, doesn't understand American politics. They went through the school of hard knocks at that time when America completely ignored India in the Afghanistan, Pakistan context. And the Indian American community, was working very, very hard at rallying the American politics, or both sides, bipartisan behind India. But anyway, we'll come back to that. First, let me move on to very quick. Surya, if you have a quick question and a comment, because we seem to be running out of time, because I know that Venkat always keeps something up his sleeve that he'll throw in, at the last minute. So I'm sure he's got some good questions there.
Yeah, thanks, Manish. I will be quick. My question is to Ramesh Kapur. Indian Americans generally identify with the Democrats, at least during my time of stay in US 90s and 2000s, with the President Bill Clinton, Al Gore, Obama. But now we are seeing a rise of nationalistic narrative across the world. And even Howdy Modi event where he publicly endorsed Trump. So how much of this will sway the Indian voters towards Trump? That is my first question. And second, we are all saying Indian Americans contribute the highest political campaign funding. So how come we are not able to influence the policy, particularly the Trump's sudden suspension of H-1Bs, or Biden campaign's opposition to CAA and Kashmir? So in terms of influencing the policy, we are not able to kind of do a good job. So these are the two questions that I would like to raise. Thank you.
Well, you see, you have to realize something. H-1B visa, okay? You cannot ask any politician, okay? I remember making that statement to Ron and Sen during the civil nuclear deal where he was ambassador. And he said, oh, the community has not supported us on H-1B visa. And I said, you are not going to expect any American politician to say it's okay for American jobs to be outsourced. And it's more now with the Trump, louder megaphone that is there than it was at that time, all right? So it's not going to happen. Those issues are not going to, and we as Americans of Indian descent are not going to go, okay? At least I do not support on H-1 visa. That's embassy job, somebody else that. It's again, because you cannot tell the American politicians that it's okay for jobs to be outsourced, all right? That's one. The CAA, again, it's human rights issue, okay? It's an issue that is controversial. It's in the Indian Supreme Court. Biden Act, you know, when I did the fundraiser first with the Jewish community in Boston, and then we did one in the Indian American community later. You know, we raised $2.5 million on the first one, $3.3 million later on. You know, Biden asked me, you know, I said, is India critical to United States national security? He says, yes, all right. And he said that, and then he did put it out on the press after that. They said that. But he says, Ramesh, how about CAA? All right. And I said to, you know, well, you know, CAA is, you know, it's in the Indian Supreme Court. I said, Mr. Vice President, let them decide. The two states have done it. So I'll go again, you know, in India, in the CAA, if India would have done, if Biden would have, if Modi would have said, okay, it's okay for Hindus and Sikhs to do it. But he went around the whole list and everybody, all religions except Muslims. You have 14% of your populations that's Muslims, okay? All right? They are patriots also. Remember that, all right? Yes, politically, they have moved to the Congress party at that time. They have more clout. They didn't have. But, you know, pendulums move, okay? At one time, it was moved to the Congress party, and the Muslims had all the support. And, you know, the triple talaq was still in India, even though it was not in Pakistan. It's because of the Muslim vote, right? And so that swings are moving on the other side, and it will swing back at the end of the day. All right. The most important thing is the bald eagle, which is the symbol of United States, and Mother India. And you know, Trump will come and go. He has bent the curve in all the institutions. Okay, and he hasn't snapped it yet. Okay, it hasn't been snapped. It will move back. Same thing with India. All right, India has a long history. And my Jewish friends, okay, who I'm very active with, all right, I say that, you know, India is the only country where Hindus where Judaism has not been discriminated over centuries, all right. So, you know, this is the history of India. This is not politicians will come and go, all right. We have to look at but India, Mother India, has survived all these years of 1,000 years of Mughal rule, 200 years of the British. Okay, so that's where the core of India, okay, the core of the Indian folks is there, and all these swings will keep swinging, but at the end of the day, okay, as I say, with the Indian Americans, our diaspora over here. You can take us out of India, but you can't take Mother India out of us. And that's the reality. And same thing with the Kamala Harris, okay? She was raised by an Indian mom all these years, all right? And that's where you will see the outshining of and the depth of India with the Biden-Kamala Harris campaign.
Before I ask Mukesh to sort of take Surya's question also, but add on to that what Manish asked you, Mukesh, where do you see the free trade? Where do you see the trade deal going if Biden becomes president? And to add to that a corollary, do you think a Democrat administration, Kamala Harris, Indian sort of one half, whatever, Do you think any democratic administration will be as fast and furious, so to say, in moving ahead and striking deals with India and being so uppity about it as Trump has been? Gone.
Well, I think foreign policy interests are defined by interest itself, and a trade deal with the U.S. is in the interest of U.S. and also India. And I've been quite intimately involved with that. In fact, I've seen India go a mile along the stretch, opening agriculture, fruits, others for the U.S. Companies to come in. And somehow it could not get President Trump's interest into that. I believe strongly, and in my discussion with Democrats, policymakers under Biden, is they will be much more graceful in trying to get a trade deal with India going. You have to understand that if you have a geopolitical alignment between India, US, and the Quad, which is including Japan and Australia, naturally, it also percolates down to the economic alignment also. So what we are envisioning is not just a trade deal. We like to see the next 4 years, at least a FTA being signed between India and the US also. And I think that defines the interests of both countries. But more important is it also kind of unshackles United States from China, especially on supply chain. So to answer your question, yes, we do expect a trade deal happening under the new administration. If it's Biden, it will definitely happen.
Great. Let me first move on to our president, Mr. S. Venkat Narayan. I'm sure he has a few comments and questions to ask. And before you conclude, Venkat, I will come back to my question.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Can you guys hear me? Yeah. Okay. I strongly believe that Biden, of course, Foreign Minister Jaishankar has said that it doesn't really matter whether Democrats come to power or the Republicans, because there is India enjoys bipartisan support. But I believe Biden, as Ramesh has pointed out, has been very sympathetic and pro-India, and he supported India all along. And when he was the vice president, he came to Bombay and he delivered a lecture in which he said, I would like to see the trade between India and the United States to go up to $500 billion. Today, America is India's biggest trading partner. We enjoy a surplus. It is $150 billion. So America is India's biggest trading partner. And as Mukesh has also said, we expect Quad to play a very important role, and America and India will sign a free trade agreement. And the way Trump looks at India is quite different from the way Biden looks at India. And Trump has been behaving more like a businessman and less than as the president of the United States of America, the world's only hyperpower. So, and he hasn't really covered himself with glory in the first debate between the two of them. And I read in the Washington Post and the New York Times and other media that people who voted for Trump the last time, they are now planning to shift their vote to Biden, Kamala Harris team. And as it is, Biden and Kamala are already enjoying a 10%, their popular support is 10% more than what Mr. Trump enjoys at this moment. Every time, and he has, the way he conducted himself, the way he downplayed the COVID crisis has been very embarrassing to Americans as well as everybody else. And eventually, coronavirus has caught up with Mr. Trump. We just hope, as Priya and everybody else said, he and his wife get well soon. But I have been saying ever since, I saw Kamala Harris in a press conference, I don't know very much, in April this year, that if I expected her to be picked as the vice presidential candidate, and I have been saying, people who follow me on Facebook, that Biden and Kamala Harris will be the next team in the White House, and I won't be surprised if Kamala Harris, gets the presidential ticket in the next election and she occupies the White House. So I'm not saying this because she is of Indian origin, but I think the way she and Biden communicate, they look like educated people. They are very dignified in their conduct and behavior. And I can't say the same thing about Mr. Trump, I'm afraid. But anyway, these are personal views. But I just hope that the Indian American community will continue to flourish in the future to come. In the Obama administration, there are more than 40 Indian Americans in the White House. I expect at least 50 or more. As you all know, more than 100 people are fighting in the state and federal elections in America, and a lot of them I hope will win, because the Indian American community is the best educated minority, and the average household income of an Indian American family is twice that of the white American. That's no way to look at things, but it's just that we are better educated, and every year 2 lakh Indian students go to America, spend $6 billion to educate themselves, and more than 1 million Indians go to America as tourists and spend $15 billion. So America today is home to more people of Indian origin than any other country on the planet, and I would expect this to only increase as days go by. And I'm absolutely confident that the Indian American community will continue to wield not just political power, but most of the doctors, engineers, scientists, professors, you name it, the Indians dominate the scene. You walk into the United Nations building and you see more Indian faces than anybody else, that kind of. So I like to think that the November 3rd election will be very exciting. And I will not be surprised if Biden and Kamala Harris make it and win the election. That will be good for India, that will be good for America, that will be good for everybody on the planet. And I want to ask Munish his question before I propose a vote of thanks. Munish, you had a question. Please go ahead.
Yeah. My take on this is, look, I was among the people, as an individual. In 2005, I met Kamala Harris at a fundraiser at a African American attorney's house in LA, and she said to me, "You're one of the first people who've given me money for my campaign." She was running for the state at that time, and I didn't see that she had. She's a cutout politician. Okay, and in America, you have to be a cutout politician to win something as big as a presidential and a vice presidential ticket. I think in their election, I want to break that myth, and you have to tell me if I'm right or wrong. Both three of you sitting there, Priya, and maybe even Mayank. In the U.S. election, it does not matter what the presidential and the vice presidential candidate are thinking of India. It does matter to the first generation Indian Americans who are on this India-US bandwagon of relationship. That yes, you have to tilt it my way because it does this for me or that for me. But India is still not an issue in the US election for the American electorate. China is. And briefly, if you could just very briefly comment on that, Ramesh and Mukesh, and even Priya and Mayank, very briefly. You have to unmute yourself, Ramesh.
Again?
Yeah.
How about now? Okay. You know what it is that I think my generation has done a poor job of educating our kids of 101 India and 101 Hinduism. all right, or whatever relations are there. And that's the problem. We were so busy making money, we were so mixing with everything that we never did that, all right? Where our kids were going through tough time in schools and everything, we never showed them how to assimilate, how to be proud to be Indian Americans, like we are, we are. And that's what I have. Impact is a new organization, is their Impact. I support it. They're trying to get next generation to run for different offices. We give them money, we show them how to do it. But the key thing is that we've got to insist that they understand that part of it. Because they do not realize that if the strategic relationship with India is great on the defense area for 50 to 70 years, they are going to be more accepted by an average American, all right? And that's why we are accepted by all the elites, all the top people, everything that we have, the IT people, everything. Look at the chairmen of all the major IT companies and are Indian Americans. But we've got to let the Indian American know that that's what this is about. There was only one person who recognized it, Ro Khanna, which I worked with him. I had a meeting with one. He said, Mr. Kapur, what you're trying to do is you're trying to do this for the next 50-cent generation, to my generation they're doing. But we have not educated our next generation why India is important, all right, to them personally, all right? And this is what we are doing, the export control care, all these things that we've done, our generation, is basically for our kids and our grandkids over here, all right? What is lost is that once that relationship is good, like Israel is, then our kids and our grandkids will be much more differently looked at. And when Kamala Harris is the vice president, they will look at us as future presidents, future vice presidents, and that's what is the credibility, and that's what we have to understand. That is not just India. We are doing it for our self-interest.
Mukesh, comment on that. My question with regards to China matters as far as US election is concerned for the American population, but India doesn't figure in there. Not with the general public. I mean, no US presidential candidate goes around in the general public saying, oh, I'll do this with India. But Trump, for example, or others are saying, we will do this against China because now they see China flexing its political muscle and getting out there, out of control.
You're right. I think you have to understand the US election is about job creation. It's about healthcare. It's about quality of life. And that's what they focus on. China comes into play because they feel China has been an unfair trade partner, has stolen jobs, stolen IP, and basically had arm-twisted US companies into joint ventures which were not necessary. And so China comes into play more and more now because US also needs, if you look at after Second World War, it was Soviet Union as the new frontier to fight, and China is going to become the same. And as China becomes a known enemy, I believe India becomes more important to US politicians also. Today, if you look at US, India have more joint military exercises than any other country in the world. We have the largest caucuses, both on the Senate side and on the Congress side. We have 40 different joint committees set up between the two countries itself. But coming back down to the common American, India still does not matter because it's all about jobs, healthcare, and quality of life.
Priya, very quickly, you have been quiet, but with your generation and with what you're doing, what is the technology relationship between India and the US is up and high. So, what do you think India will start mattering now with the next president, whoever it is, whether it's Trump back in the White House or Biden in the White House?
Yes, definitely. Because see, with my generation, right, I came in this country in year 2000, and this is my third presidential election in which I'm voting. So as closely as I see it, and I participate in it, it's extremely important that from not only from technology perspective, but from other parts of it as well, as Mukesh rightly said, and so did Ramesh touch upon, is healthcare, and from that all perspectives, because see, innovation is happening in every industry. It's just not in technology. It's happening in all sectors, all verticals of the industry. So that's extremely important. And one thing what I wanted to add here is also is from the perspective of the second generation, because see, I see it as, I have two growing kids, and it's very extremely important for us to see what their future is. And in from that perspective, it's extremely important that we have a commander in chief there, who very closely understands some human values of empathy, care, respect, which are very, very important for a country to grow and prosper, rather than only being strategic. And those human values are what Vice President Biden embodies, and so does Kamala Harris. And so I think it's extremely important from that perspective, that they will lead us, the countries, and they will help every American. So it's going to be, even if in a tweet style, I want to say how it will look like, it's equalities and opportunities for all, no matter who you are and what your qualifications.
Well, this has been a very interesting discussion. We thank you all. I'll now request Venkat to propose the vote of thanks. Venkat, unmute.
Yeah, that was really very interesting webinar we had, and there's a lot of optimism I can sense, and more people are expecting to see Biden and Kamala Harris in the White House, and let's hope their hopes become a reality on the 3rd of November. But thank you very much, Ramesh, Mukesh, Mayank, Priya, Surya, Purnima, and Manish, for making this such a very interesting, informed discussion about the Indian community, Indian Americans, and the Indian diaspora and the American elections. Thank you so very much. Good night to people in India, and good morning to our friends in America. This is the end of this webinar. Thank you so much.